So when you're starting seeds, I like to have at least some kind of a plan with what I'm going to start and how much. So I think having a notebook and getting a little bit of an idea of what you want to start, how much you want to start, just kind of allows you to pick out what tools you need, get an idea of how much seed starting mix you're going to need. I like to start using a dedicated seed starting mix. It's usually a very light material that is low in nutrients, but really fine and holds moisture well. And for all the little baby roots, it works really well. I'll add a little bit of water to that just so that it clumps up a little bit better and gets a little more moisture in it before actually planting them. You can make your own seed starting mix as well. There's lots of recipes for it online. It's usually a mixture of vermiculite and peat moss or cocoa coir, the coconut husks. And so for this, I'm starting with my larger tomatoes. I also have cherry tomatoes, sweet peppers, eggplants, a lot of things that like to have some extra time to germinate and get to a better size before you put them out into the garden. There's definitely some stuff that you can start ahead of time, but depending on where you live, you may have a long enough growing season that doesn't matter too much. I don't usually start cucumbers early or beans early. They germinate fine and have plenty of time to grow during the season. But tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers, definitely. And so for me, not only am I growing for myself, but I'm starting some plants for our Master Gardener seed plant sale in April. So I got to figure that as well. Some of these I have saved from last year. So some of these I know have grown well in my garden. So I saved those seeds. They will tend to adapt to your particular microclimate. So saving seeds can be great. Plus these are free now. So that's great. And all of these are larger sort of slicing, either a slicing tomato or like a canning tomato, which is really good to have. So most of my seed start trays are in either 6 or 12 cells, and definitely for tomatoes, in these larger ones, I will double up seeds in here and usually get 2 plants per cell, and then when I go to pot them up, I'll just tease them apart and get double the amount. So I can do, if this is 24 total, I could do 2 rows of one kind and 2 rows of another, and then eventually get 24, if they all germinate, 24 plants out of that, which is really efficient. These smaller ones, I would probably just do a single plant each, and I'll probably use those for eggplants and sweet peppers. So let's see, I have not grown that before, or this one. Ozark Pink did really well. So let's do 12 of those. If you get 20 total plants, that's still great. I'm only going to use a couple in my garden, and the rest will go to the plant sale, assuming I have enough Ozark Pink seeds. That's the other thing too. Some of depending on where you get seeds from and how many you saved, I may not have 24 seeds of this. Some of these more heirloom varieties, you don't necessarily get a ton of seeds each time. So we shall see. This is Pink Berkeley Tide. I have not grown that before, but let's just do 12 of those since I have not grown them before.
So here's a question.
Yep.
Do you ever double up and then thin out? Like, do you trust that the germination rate is going to be 100% or pretty close enough to it?
I do. Like some of these that I just bought, this is from Johnny's. This has a germination rate test where they did a test rate on these seeds that was 94%. And so I don't know what scale they do that on, but Johnny's sells like to farms and stuff. So my guess is they do a pretty large batch. So there's a good chance I'll get 100% out of that. Yeah, I usually plan. I hate thinning anything. That's terrible.
That's a lot of gardeners because you're killing a plant.
Yes, exactly. Even though I know either I thin it then, or I'm trying to give away plants that I'm not going to have room to grow. So there is the reality of at some point it's going to, it's not going to be in my garden. But I would still rather, if I can save as many and get as many going as possible, you find somebody that'll take one tomato plant, one or two that's just trying it, and I'll give them away. I don't, I do this for fun. I don't need to try to make money at it. And then the Millionaire, and some of these will say there'll be like a minimum amount of seeds on it. So this one just says there's at least, minimum 40 seeds. So you're going to get at least 40 in there. Not all of them. This one's a minimum 25 seeds. So that one I probably will only try to do 12 of. So that's the Millionaire. We'll do 12 of those.
So I see Johnny's. I see Baker Creek.
Johnny's, Baker Creeks. I have done Territorial in the past as well. I don't know that I'm going to start any of those this year. I think Salvatierra's Select was... You can get it a couple of places. I think it might have been a park, maybe, but these are saved from last year. Those are the primary. Those. I'm trying to think if I have anything else from any other. No, those. I mean, those have been the big ones. Every year we get more and more seed. We get put on more mailing lists, so we get more seed catalogs every year.
Who doesn't love a seed catalog?
Exactly. Right? But I do think that if you have found a vendor for seeds that you've had success with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, because some of these, like maybe not the Millionaire, but the Mortgage Lifter tomato, some of these like real classic heirlooms or Purple Cherokee or Black Krim, almost all of the companies are going to sell that variety. So, whether you get it from Territorial or Park, if you've had success with it in the past and you're not saving it, then great. I will say, when you're looking at, I don't want to say it's controversial, when you're looking at seeds, I do like heirloom stuff, especially for some tomatoes. However, there are certain things that I am really trying to get a good crop on, like cucumbers or basil. And so some of the, Johnny's or some of the companies that do like the real up-to-date hybrids that have a lot of disease resistance and a lot of, been bred to be high producing and so forth. I like those. If I can get an organic version of it, great. But I mean, we live in the South, and so, when August comes around, if you don't have some kind of resistance to powdery mildew or mosaic virus or something like that, you're just going to be fighting it. So, so we have a mix of all sorts of stuff, organic versus and hybrids and that kind of stuff. One thing, if you don't know this, not just geek out about seed stuff a little bit, there are varieties of peppers that are hybrids, and they'll have F, like an F1, I believe, and I can't quote me if you might know this too, but I think the F1s, you can't save the seed and get a reliable of that same, what you planted. You might get one of the parents at that point. Versus if something has been, is a hybrid but has had enough children, I guess, generations, where you can reliably get that same plant.
The F1 is like a phenotypic designation or something, right?
And
it's genetics.
Yeah. And so as long as you get seeds from them, from the breeder, you'll get the plant that you want. Yeah. But if you save those seeds, you might get you'll get a pepper, but it's not going to be the pepper that you had the year before.
So how long do you keep seeds? Do you try to clear out every couple of years?
I try to clear out every 3 to 4 years probably. If you have a lot of seeds that are old, for some reason, if you have enough old seeds and you want to basically do your own germination test at that point and like start 10 and see how many of them germinate, you know, but especially for like tomatoes and peppers, saving those seeds is pretty easy. And so just save them every year. And that way you're always getting new ones anyways. And a lot of these heirloom ones, again, like this Millionaire, there's only 25 seeds in here. So there's a good chance I will have started all of these within 2 years, probably 2 or 3 years. So if I have anything, you know, I mean, some stuff like carrots and dill and stuff that they give you like 400 seeds in every pack. Yeah, I mean, some of those are not going to be, I'm not going to.
Talk about thinning out. To grow carrots.
Oh, I have not, most root vegetables, you don't seed start. You want to start them because they don't like that taproot disturbed. I know carrots are notoriously finicky when it comes to germination, and my experience is that I have never had really good success with starting carrots. So it's nice to have a tray because you're going to make a bit of a mess if you don't. Even if you have one, you're going to make a bit of a mess. So let's add a little bit of moisture here. Tub drugs is what this is. You can get them in all kind of sizes. I've got a bunch of them. They're just, I think we buy 1 or 2 more every year, just because we end up using so many of them. You don't have to pre-moisten the soil, but one thing I've noticed, especially with this seed starting mix, it's so light and fluffy that if I even this out and put the seeds in it, a day or 2 after you water it, you'll have half of it left in there, which is probably okay, but I'll give them a little bit of a start. Having a big scoop like this is also pretty great. Feel free to get in there with your hands too, because it's nothing like when the sun's out and you're working in some soil and starting plants. I think that's one of my favorite times of the year as a gardener. Nothing has diseases yet. Nothing's failed.
The world is full of hope.
The world is full of hope and the future, and
it's like opening day of baseball season.
That's right. Everybody's got a winning record, right? At that point. All right. So in this one, I will just fill these guys up, kind of breaking up any chunks as I go, just to make sure. And the nice thing about using a tray like this is once this one is done, I can just dump anything I lost back into the bin, so you don't have to be too careful. Yep. Your hands should get dirty when you're doing this. That's part of the fun. I also like to have tags. There's lots of different ways that you can mark. These little white plastic ones have like a smooth side and a rough side, and the rough side works great with like a heavier weight pencil. So that's just what I'll use to list, although I do have some from last year. And I might use those. Salvateras, and let's do a couple of Ozark. Yep, because those are the 2 I'm going to do 24 of, so I'll do 2 each. And then I will often put the date on here, although I will also write in the notebook the date that I started each of these. That is not something I used to do, and
Yeah, that's a good tip.
definitely like just knowing. I'll take pictures too. That's a great way, is like on your phone, just take some pictures of starting stuff, and that'll have a date stamp on the picture as well. So I can remember like, oh, when did I start that? So looking back, how I knew that we started stuff really early last year. And so I'm waiting a little bit longer this year so that the plants don't get quite so big. So these are ones that were saved. So you can see some of them are a little bit stuck together. So every once in a while, you just kind of want to pick those apart. And if you get two and you get a couple of plants, then sometimes that, if I accidentally, like I'm shooting for 2 per cell, but if some of them are stuck together and you get a third one, that is typically when I'll probably just just cut one of them off. And for these, since these are large enough, I will kind of do corners slightly. Just make it a little bit easier when I'm separating them out. You can use tweezers if you want to for this. I know there's all sorts of little gadgets and whatnot, but
I use the tip of a pencil.
yep,
My pencil's not as fancy as yours.
well, that. A lot of people do that too. Do you wet it first and then, or you just?
Oh, I'll seed with my fingers, but I'll kick the dirt over with the
Gotcha.
pencil,
Yeah,
kinda
yeah.
Push them down a little bit.
And so there's 2 in each cell, and then I'll do the next. What I will not do is go on to another variety of tomato until these are, tamped down and then labeled in what rows they are, because you won't. It's very easy to not know the difference once you're just looking at a seed. About
or
which.
at a seedling, or at a
Seedling, you
juvenile
definitely.
plant, or-
Nope, you will not know. So label. Especially if you're going to give seedlings or sell them, I suppose, if you want to. But if you're going to give them away, it's really nice to at least have the name of what it is so that somebody could go find it online and look up, is it an indeterminate tomato, meaning it's going to just keep growing until it, vining out until it dies, or is it a determinate tomato that's going to hit a certain height and do most of its fruiting at once.
I had several dozen extra tomato starts last year and was thinking, oh yeah, I can sell them at the plant sale and all this sort of stuff. And I couldn't figure out which was which because I had failed to label. And I was growing a cherry tomato and a big slicing tomato. So I would have hated to say,
like, I want a cherry tomato. Well, that's not that.
Yeah, you got a tomato sandwich, bro.
You do.
Have fun.
The only thing you can know is certain tomatoes have a potato leaf style, and then other ones have have the more traditional kind of thin serrated leaf, and that you can tell early on the difference between those two plants, but you won't know what. I mean, that's only if you only started 2 and they happen to be different.
Very wide variety difference.
Yeah. And so we do have some chopsticks, so that's something you can use that's pretty good. Oftentimes I will just, you only need them about 1/4 of an inch down. Do you go any deeper than that I usually go.
I barely do that.
Barely, yeah.
Yeah. It's mostly just putting them under a little bit and putting a tiny
Yep,
bit
and
of
then a
dirt
little bit more on top, yep. But you could, if you wanted to go deeper, you could do that. And then sometimes I might just give it a little more, just to kind of. Those are in, and these were Ozark Pink, so I will put those right like that. If these were all the same, I would probably just put a single, just one label. And I just kind of know that if there's only one label in there, then a whole tray is that. But then if I'm going to do like this, where I'm going to do, actually, you know what? That was Salvateras. Just realized that. See? Gotta remember. There we go. Also, a mistake that I make occasionally, well, usually every year, honestly, I don't consider the amount of room that I need under my grow lights inside for the potted up seedlings. When you've got, this hopefully is 48 tomato plants, right? Because if we double up and they all germinate, then that's 48. And that's, if I pot up into a 4-inch pot like this per plant, where am I going to put 48 of those? So last year I had a couple hundred seedlings, and I was trying to figure out all sorts of random places to put them that were getting enough light. So I'm not going to do that as many. Because you start here and you go, oh, I got so much room, I can start so much stuff. But that's not what we're doing. I'm going to see how much. Let's get this out of the way so I don't do again. And now we'll start our Ozark Pink. This Ozark Pink is the description on the website said that it was from the Ozarks, so that it handled heat and humidity really well, and it did seem to do that. So for where we live, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. So once you've got your seeds in here, everything's labeled. I like a tray like this that is in 2 pieces, because you can put water in there. It's called bottom watering, and it's really the best way to water seeds and seedlings, because if you water from the top, you could disturb the seeds. The seeds could get and stay too wet and theoretically rot or have mildew issues. So something like this, I would just put maybe half an inch. A lot of them will have kind of a little mark of water in the bottom. Set this in here, and then a lot of seed starting trays or systems will have a humidity dome, and this, and it doesn't quite fit because of the labels, but that's no big deal. This really helps it stay moist in there, helps keep some heat in, and then set this under either a south-facing window if you have that and it gets good light, or you can buy a grow light system, although honestly, from a lot of what I've read and found, if you just get a really bright fluorescent or LED shop light and have a way to suspend that over them, that works great. You don't necessarily need the all blue or purple or some sort of light for that, and they tend to be way more expensive than honestly you really need. If you're gonna be starting seeds inside, you can start some. If you've got good light, a big window, south facing, that can be great for a good amount of seeds. If you get into it and you really want to start a lot of seeds, I would recommend getting at least 1 or 2 grow light systems that also, a lot of them will have the lights on a chain, and you can raise or lower it. So you can keep them really close when they're just starting out as seedlings, and then as the plants start getting taller, you just raise the light up with it. And that keeps the seedlings from getting leggy, which is where they're reaching for the light. If the lights are too high or it's not bright enough, you'll get a longer, the space between the leaves on the stem will get longer, and you can get them, they can flop, and it can be kind of a mess down the road.
Talk to me about heat mats.
Yes, so heat mats, depending on how warm your house, you just keep your house, that's part of it. And 2, depending on the plant type, the seed type, tomatoes and especially peppers and eggplants too, the seeds want to germinate when they're warm. It can be helpful to have a heat mat to put underneath, and I can get one to show you under here. It just raises, it only will ever get warm, but it raises the ambient temperature and raises the soil temperature more into a range that the seeds want to be at to germinate. So some, especially I have found with peppers and eggplants, they really want a warm soil to germinate in. So if you want to get them started sooner, they will germinate eventually, but if you want to kind of really get them a good head start before you put them into the garden, a heat mat can be a really good idea. And then you just roll them up and store them during the winter and ready to go. So, and then this is a repeat until all seeds are planted, pretty much. and then you got to find room for them. And then depending on the seed, like tomatoes, I've had come up in less than a week. Peppers and eggplants sometimes will be a little bit more than that. Your seed packet should tell you how long before your last freeze date that you want to start your seed. Especially warm. I mean, a lot of us are going to be growing peppers, tomatoes, maybe eggplants. Okra probably falls in this too. They can't get cold. They cannot get frost at all. So you don't want to put them out until you're well past. I don't say well past, but at least probably a week or two past your last frost date, just to be safe. Unless you have some sort of a plastic sheet covering thing for wherever you're growing them at. And so what you don't want to do is start them so early that by the time you're ready to plant them out, you've got a tomato plant that's this big. Because honestly, they will grow healthier and better if you plant them out when they're, yay tall. Even though when you go to the box stores, you're going to get, they're going to want to sell you these huge tomatoes or peppers. Those have been forced in a greenhouse to get that big. You're going to get a healthier plant and a better yield overall if you have a good, small, healthy seedling outside, because there's nothing like sun and rain and all that to really help it grow. So then once everything is labeled, watered, and ready to go, or I might water it in here too, just, you don't want to spill everywhere. Got the heat mat down, it's plugged in. Got the light lowered down. This fits in just nicely. And then I would probably lower this to be right over the top, because the more light, the better. And then it's just make sure they stay watered and moist, but not wet, not soaking. And then wait for the fun.